Having recovered his political rights and with all convictions against him overturned, former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said he was the victim of the biggest legal lie in 500 years. In Spain, the regional president of Madrid, Isabel Díaz Ayuso, stepped down and dissolved her own legislature, triggering snap elections. Libya's parliament approved a unity government on Wednesday to lead the war-ravaged North African nation to December elections. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Brazil, where former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva held a press conference this Wednesday following the annulment of his convictions related to the Lava Jato case and the subsequent restoration of his political rights. Lula began his statements by recalling the moment in which he turned himself into the authorities 3 years ago, reasserting his innocence in the face of the accusations against him. The former president also reviewed his experience in jail. Lula stated that he was the victim of the biggest legal lie in 500 years, and at the same time he thanked global movements and leaders for their solidarity. On Monday, Supreme Court Judge Edson Fachin overturned all the convictions against the former president for corruption brought in the framework of the highly discredited Operation Lava Jato, which opens the door for Lula to stand as a candidate in the upcoming elections.
I know that I was the victim of the biggest legal lie that has been told in 500 years of history. I know that my wife Marisa died because of the pressure. I was even forbidden to visit my brother because they made the decision that they wanted me to come to Sao Paulo, that I should go to the other city. They said that there could not even be photographs. So if there is a Brazilian who has reason to have deep wounds, and many wounds, it is me, but I do not have them.
And our correspondent in Brazil, Brian Meir, brings us more details on what former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva had to say this Wednesday during a press conference held at the metal workers' union he once headed in São Bernardo do Campo outside Sao Paulo.
Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva just finished a historic press conference in the headquarters of the ABC Metallurgical Workers Union in São Bernardo do Campo. The press conference was the first one since his political rights were restored by the Supreme Court 2 days ago. So during this press conference, which lasted over 3 hours, the former president made strong and sharp contrasts between the way that the Workers' Party governed Brazil and what's happening now under far-right President Jair Bolsonaro. He talked about the military. He said that no president, including presidents during the military dictatorship, spent as much money on the military as he did, but that the goal of a military should be to be strong to protect a nation against external enemies and to protect the sovereignty of a nation, not to be turned against its own people, targeting internal enemies, which was the goal during the military dictatorship and also what Jair Bolsonaro is trying to recreate right now. He also went out of his way to thank Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro for the solidarity that he showed while he was suffering political imprisonment. And also he expressed solidarity for the Venezuelan leader, saying that the role of the United States is not to meddle in other countries. During a question and answer session at the end of his speech, he was asked if he's planning on running for office in 2022, and he said that it's way too early to say anything yet. At times he was funny, at times he demonstrated his formidable intelligence. The bottom line is that whether he decides to run or not in 2022, Lula is going to be a formidable factor in the upcoming presidential election.
Thank you, Brian. And continuing in Brazil, residents in a stronghold for the Workers' Party of former President Luiz Inácio da Silva welcomed the Supreme Court ruling that overturns all the convictions brought against him as part of Operation Lava Jato and allows him to run for office again.
Now the truth is coming out that he, Lula, wasn't to blame. So I think they should cancel the process and clear his name so that he can be our president in 2 years.
Now, the decision by the Supreme Court restores the historical truth and will somehow help the Brazilian democracy to advance.
In Chile, the Union of Santiago Metro professionals and technicians announced a selective strike to demand better salaries and announce a lack of dialogue with the subway's board of directors. The union, which represents more than 1,800 workers, stressed that the possibilities of dialogue with the subway administration were non-existent. In a statement, the union pointed out that management had forced a strike action by failing to include workers as an essential group in the COVID-19 vaccination campaign, reducing salaries during 2020, imposing massive layoffs and other labour abuses. At the same time, workers denounced the disproportionate wage of senior management. In Guatemala, indigenous people and farmers took to the streets for the second consecutive day to protest against the appointment of judges to the Constitutional Court. Hundreds of citizens, members of indigenous, rural and social organisations demonstrated in the country's capital, stressing that the appointed judges are not suitable to occupy a position in the highest court of the country due to their links with corruption and the mining industry, as well as the genocide that occurred in the country during the internal conflict. In the framework of the 21st session of the Cuba-Venezuela Intergovernmental Commission, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel met with Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez to discuss bilateral and multilateral issues. The Cuban president reiterated the commitment to solidarity with Venezuela, as well as the will to continue perfecting cooperation in the current political and economic situation, worsened by the consequences of COVID-19. Díaz-Canel also condemned the coercive and unilateral measures imposed by the United States against Venezuela. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan vice president condemned the strengthening of the illegal US blockade against Cuba. During the meeting, the two officials studied the bilateral work agenda, including the progress of cooperation projects.
La ciencia al recrudecimiento del bloqueo de Estados Unidos contra Cuba. La ocasión fue propicia además para intercambiar sobre aspectos de carácter bilateral y multilateral, incluida la marcha de los vínculos de colaboración, así como la actual coyuntura política regional e internacional que está matizada.
According to statements from the White House, a change in US policy towards Cuba is not among the priorities of the Biden administration. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki noted that a Cuba policy shift is not currently among President Biden's top priorities. However, she acknowledged that some of the Trump administration's policy decisions would be reviewed, among them the inclusion of Cuba on the list of state sponsors of terrorism. This Wednesday, March 10th, marks the 22nd anniversary of the death of Ecuadorian painter Osvaldo Guayasamín, who spoke out on several occasions on behalf of Latin American integration and against US imperialism. In his paintings, Guayasamín captured social resistance and also advocated for a fairer and more equal society. The indigenous artist was born on July 6, 1919 in Quito and worked to portray the struggles of the common people, advocating a world in which they could live with dignity. He was a constant traveller through Latin American countries and is considered one of the most outstanding examples of the artistic movement that came to be known as indigenous expressionism. In Spain, the regional president of Madrid, Isabel Díaz Ayuso, stepped down and dissolved her own legislature, triggering snap elections. The move came after the Citizens Party withdrew its support for the Conservative Popular Party in the regional government of the southeastern region of Murcia and announced a surprise pact with the Socialist Workers' Party. The Citizens Party then presented a vote of no confidence in the Murcia government, which if successful would give the party the regional presidency. The move sparked concern that the same would happen in Madrid, where Citizens was also in a coalition with the Popular Party of Ayuso, leading to her decision to step down and call an election for May 4th. And the Vice President of the Madrid region, Ignacio Aguado, described Ayuso's resignation as an irresponsible act.
President Isabel Díaz Ayuso decided to resign and called for early elections in the community of Madrid. She thus unilaterally broke the agreement between the Popular and Citizens parties, and also her own word. In our view, this is the most irresponsible thing she has done since she took in the community of Madrid a year and a half ago. Not only because the people of Madrid need stability above anything else, but also because there are 400 people hospitalized. There are 95,000 people unemployed in our region.
In Argentina, feminist, transgender and human rights movements and trade unions delivered a petition to President Alberto Fernandez's administration to promote action to tackle gender-based violence. Our correspondent, Carolina Silvestre, brings us more details in the following report.
Among the demands made is to declare a national emergency due to violence against women and gender discrimination, and to allocate special and appropriate budgets to sectors involved.
We need real public policy and concrete measures because in cases of feminicides, we have seen that restraining orders are violated by the aggressors, and we have to regret feminicides. So in this case, for example, in Ursula's case, she was not listened to. There was a restraining order that could be violated as in other cases. So we need to move forward preventive detention in cases of risk, to have some kind of record of complaints, to know the cases to be able to identify the perpetrators of violence.
Systematic training in the field for all personnel involved in these cases is another demand.
I think we need appropriate personnel in police stations so that when a person makes a complaint more than once, they can go and visit them and see what happened and everything and provide the necessary protection so it doesn't end up becoming a front page story. Both in the case of a feminicide or a transvesticide, as is not only women, but we include all those who are no longer here and for whom today we shout, we want to stay alive.
Effective and real coordination between the judicial branch, courts and prosecutors, law enforcement and municipalities to tackle each case is another point which representatives of all ideologies agree on.
How many more girls have to go through this situation before the laws are really taken seriously? Judicial reform is necessary, but there are a lot of laws that remain a dead letter because this same situation, because there is no respect, because the struggles women have been fighting for so many years and are embodied in these laws are not respected. They are not carried out in reality.
Legal regulations such as those surrounding comprehensive sexual education, which should be taught in all educational institutions in the country, are not.
It is something that has been calling us together for a long time. We have been demanding it for a long time, and today we reach a moment in which we say enough is enough. There can be no more patriarchal justice like we have now. We represent many women and comrades who cannot gather here, who are in the countryside, who are in different provinces of our country, but we fight under the same slogan, we are united.
With a massive mobilization that took place a few days ago, hundreds of demonstrators demanded that the highest court of the country complies with the Micaela law and other measures to prevent more death.
Carolina Silvestre, TeleSUR, Buenos Aires.
In Myanmar, police forces repressed groups of railway workers who are on strike against the military government. Dozens of heavily armed soldiers and police surrounded protesters in a residential area of Malwagon district in the centre of the former capital, Rangoon. Railway workers, who've been an active part of the protest movement against the military takeover, denounced that at least 60 people have lost their lives during the brutal repression by security forces. They also stressed that their strike and street barricades will be maintained. Swarms of migratory locusts invaded fields in Namibia's Kavango region at the weekend, destroying crops and other vegetation in their wake and diminishing the hope for a good harvest. The recent locust invasion in the Kavango region followed a similar outbreak of the African migratory red locust, which attacked fields in the Zambezi region of the country from August last year, destroying more than 5,000 hectares of green fields. The Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform has sent a team of experts to assess the situation and start spraying pesticides in the affected areas.
So far, Sambu and Mororo in the Mashara constituency.
Sudan began vaccinating frontline healthcare workers against the novel coronavirus on Tuesday after receiving its first batch of vaccines last week. The country is the first in the Middle East and North Africa to receive vaccines through the UN-led COVAX initiative that seeks to provide jabs to poor and middle-income countries. The first batch to arrive in Sudan was comprised of 828,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which are planned to cover 414,000 frontline healthcare workers across the country. Sudan has secured a total of 3.4 million doses through COVAX, which are expected to arrive in batches through to the end of September.
The next phase starts on May 15, and 15% of the population will be vaccinated, which include Croatians coming in direct contact with the public, such as bank employees, police officers, transportation workers, public servants, and professors in school and universities.
Libya's parliament on Wednesday approved a unity government to lead the war-ravaged North African nation to December elections, held as a historic step towards ending a decade of chaos. After 2 days of intense debate under heavy security in the central city of Sirte, the parliament approved Prime Minister-designate Abdulhamid Dbeibas a cabinet with 121 of the 132 lawmakers present voting in favour. The interim government must now tackle the country's many problems, from a dire economic crisis and soaring unemployment to crippling inflation and wretched public services, following the destruction caused by the 2011 NATO-led invasion of the country and assassination of leader Muammar Gaddafi. On Tuesday, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman met Sudan's Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok and discussed developing bilateral relations. During the meeting, the two leaders reviewed Saudi-Sudanese relations in various fields, including financial support and investment projects Saudi Arabia pledged to Sudan, in addition to a number of issues of mutual interest. It was emphasized that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is keenly interested in the security and stability of Sudan in order to achieve the aspirations of its population. Saudi Arabia also welcomed the United States' decision to remove Sudan from its state sponsors of terrorism list late last year. In December 2020, China launched a mass vaccination campaign against COVID-19 after its previous successes in combating the virus. Our colleague and CGTN's reporter in Wuhan, Pang Jingjing, brings us more information in the following report.
China launched a mass vaccination campaign in December 2020 after completing the immunization of risk groups. Vaccination is free, voluntary, and follows the principles of information. By February 2021, 30 million people have been vaccinated. Last Friday, March 5th, China approved 2 more COVID-19 vaccines for public use, in addition to those produced by Sinopharm and Sinovac. One of these vaccines, developed by CanSino Biologics, requires only 1 shot, and its production capacity could reach 500 million doses this year. China provides health assistance to 53 countries and has exported vaccines to 27 countries, including Argentina, Chile, Peru, Colombia, Mexico, and Bolivia. This is a concrete step by China to actively implement President Xi Jinping's declaration that vaccines are a global public good.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.